and more. Fox News contributor Sara Carter and radio talk show host and former aide to Chuck Schumer, Chris Hahn. All right, guys, are we going to listen to this sound?
They interviewed me about the Clintons several hours, a good part of the day. That was the indication. They, as good agents, they didn't say exactly and specifically what they were doing as far as the investigation, but they were looking into the Clintons, and the information that
All right. Now, what we've got here is this guy is the guy who was an informant for the FBI. The Russians tried to access people in the United States, found fertile ground with the Clintons, who sold them the uranium. And this guy was undercover. And the amazing part of this, Sarah, was that the Department of Justice gagged this undercover witness and informant for the FBI, said, if you talk, you'll go to jail. Well, the gag was lifted, and now he's talking. And what does it sound like to you?
Absolutely. I mean, they gagged him. He wasn't able to say anything until the DOJ lifted the gag order. And then when he came out and told his story, he wanted people to know what was going on between the Russians and the Clintons, and about millions of dollars that he knew had been routed through and believed to be routed through to the Clinton Foundation for in-kind favors so that the Russians could basically enter our uranium market and our energy market. And all of a sudden, when he came forward, you have the Democrats and everyone attacking him, coming out and trying to discredit him. And he's like, no way, this is going to end now. I'm going to come out and defend myself.
Okay, Chris, what do you say to this? The guy was a witness for the prosecution, and in something that is unheard of, and anyone, judge, lawyer, anyone I've ever worked with, gagged by the Department of Justice?
A lot of people are gagged by the Department of Justice and not allowed to talk. I think that's part of the reason why the Attorney General used to fire Andy McCabe last week. But let's be clear here. I read what this guy said. It's a big jump for this to even be relevant at all. Look, Judge, if Hillary Clinton is somehow indicted over this deal, I will buy you a Coke and tell you you're right. But right now, it is completely irrelevant to the national conversation.
Chris, 1 minute, Chris. He is currently now a witness for the FBI. There is something there. This Clinton Foundation investigation, it was never shut down. They attempted to try to quiet it down, but the FBI is coming back now, and they're saying, wait, we need to look at this. The Russians gave him specific information.
Nonsense.
No, it's not. He spent
it's a nice
3 decades.
I know.
Three decades,
Sarah,
Chris.
Sarah,
Chris, just
Sarah,
give me 1 minute.
She's not the president of the United States. Unless I missed something, Sarah. Unless I missed something, Sarah.
Chris.
She didn't win the election. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, but the FBI is questioning him.
Chris, stop with it's irrelevant. She didn't win. You're a criminal, and if you run for president, you get away with it? Is that your reasoning? Because that's not. It has nothing to do with crime in this country.
An investigation does not make you criminal unless you're in some other country.
No,
here,
it doesn't.
You're innocent.
But
right now,
there's
some obscure investigation going.
Chris,
this is a nice distraction, but it's irrelevant.
It's not a distraction. If the Democrats are screaming mad about Russia, here's real collusion here. There was something that happened that 20% of our uranium, yes, our mining rights, were sold to the Russians. And we know that Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 by Renaissance Capital.
There were 9 other agencies that approved that deal. There were 9 other agencies that approved that deal.
We also know that a lot of that information did not reach the people in those agencies, and that's what they're investigating now. Great all you want, Chris, but there's an investigation and something's going to happen.
This guy didn't even say he knew anything, actually, if you read the story.
This guy was so important, Chris, that the FBI and the United States Attorney used him as a witness in a Russian case involving extortion. So don't say
and paid him $51,000. And pay him $51,000 for being a witness.
So, I mean, you can't just say poo-poo. What difference does it make? It makes a big difference. But anyway, let me keep moving on this thing. The Republican leadership now has passed or presented a bill to the president for $1.3 trillion. What do you say, Sarah?
So frustrating. I mean, look, Americans are frustrated. They're angry. They don't want the same old, same old. I think that's what they got here. The president was cornered. This is what I have been hearing. The president was kind of caught in a corner right here. He was, Chris, he was. And he was caught in a corner. And now there has to be another resolution. Look, to the border wall. That was what was so important to so many people. I've spent the majority of my career, down on the Mexico border, back and forth. I understand how dangerous this is. This is a national security issue, and I think the president gets
Chris,
that.
you keep saying
the president, look. Yeah, because the president is supposed to lead the budget budget negotiation process.
Congress. He doesn't run Congress.
Mick Mulvaney should have been at the table negotiating this budget. And if the president doesn't fire him tomorrow, he is being ridiculous. The president should have been involved. He should have been negotiating this deal. This is the president's budget. The buck stops with him. It's his fault. And if he doesn't like it, he shouldn't have signed it.
You know what, Chris? Don't say things that aren't true.
Go ahead. It's not. You know,
he signed it.
He didn't veto it, and you're right about that. And there's a lot of anger about that right now. But this is not the president's budget. This is not the president's budget. If you look at this, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, there were a lot of people involved in making this happen, Chris.
You know, Chris, saying
Sarah, the president is the most powerful person in the... The president is the most powerful person in this process. I worked in Congress. I've seen this process. If this president wanted to engage, he could have engaged. He could have gotten his way on most of this stuff. He may have had to compromise on some things, but he would have gotten a lot more than he got in this budget. So the only person he has to blame is himself. And if he wants to start firing people tomorrow, Mick Mulvaney is probably the right guy to go.
And maybe he will. Maybe there will be people that will be fired over this. I don't doubt it. There's a lot of anger out there, but I think right now that it's already been signed, there's only one step, and that's to move forward to figure out what needs to be done to rectify this, because something has to be done. And I know that
border. All right, we're running out of time, guys, but I got to tell you, that border wall is an absolute necessity. And if the Democrats don't want it, then they can take responsibility for the drugs coming through the border.
Mexico to pay for it, like he said he would.
Sarah, this isn't a joke, Chris, but it's good to have you on. Chris Hahn, Sarah Carter. All right, the former vice president wants to beat up the current president. It's just one of the most outrageous things that I heard this week. Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill, is standing by live to break it all down with me. Next.
When someone watches the news, they want someone they can trust. Our job is to cut through the talking points.
We're going to ask the tough questions because there's